he gasped, overwhelmed with disbelief. Could it be true? Memories flooded back of the days spent with his father, especially the sounds of metal being hammered into shape. Ballo cautiously made his way toward his father. While working the forge, his dad started offering wise words to his son. There are crucial lessons we dwarves must always remember. If you ever encounter someone who leaves your legs quaking or your whole body trembling in fear, and you find yourself unable to resist their commands. Ballos's father skillfully used tongs to extract the glowing ingot from the forge. He then added, "You must turn tail and run without a glance back." He tilted his head to face Ballo. Confused by his father's peculiar warning, Ballo looked up and inquired, "What? Dad, what do you mean?" Dipping the ingot into water, Ballo's father answered, "You are not a full-blooded dwarf. You may have escaped the pull of your lineage, but as long as my blood flows through your veins, you will always remain tied to that bond. If such a situation arises, you must flee at once." Hearing this, the boy stared at his father. Worry etched on his face as he asked, "But what if I can't escape?" His father responded, "If you're stuck in a position where escape isn't an option," then he turned sharply toward Ballo and advised, "Then you must simply comply with their demands." He knelt closer, placing a reassuring hand on Ballo's shoulder. "Son, remember this well. If you find yourself in this kind of predicament, you must dash away immediately. You were born of half-human blood. I know you're sharp-witted." Ballo, puzzled, asked, "Dad, but what are these people even doing?" His father quickly raised his hand to cover Ballos's mouth, glancing around suspiciously. "Their ears are always pricked for sounds. Do not speak recklessly in any place. As for their identities..." Reality snapped back. Ballo looked at Luis, sheer terror in his eyes, and shouted, "Could it possibly be a dragon?" Luis supported himself, grinning at him, then winked and confirmed. "Exactly." Ballo gasped. "A dragon?" Luis smirked triumphantly. Pleased with himself, he thought, "I suspected as much, given his stature. Turns out my hunch was spot on." Recalling a past memory, he felt a sense of déjà vu. Just as when he first laid eyes on the dwarf repairman alongside his father, dwarves are clever folk. So he once queried his father if it was right to have them labor for free like that. Genlocker extended a hand toward Luis, flashing a friendly smile, and assured him, "There's nothing to panic over, Luis. This is merely retribution for their misdeeds towards us over the ages." He mused. They refer to it as the blood bond. Despite thorough investigations, he found just one piece of info stating that dragons were practically eradicated by dwarves, which was the sole clue he could unearth. It was, truly, a pity. Yet if they had committed a blunder so grave, it nearly resulted in the extinction of dragons. Generosity was unnecessary, right? As Luis advanced, Ballo impulsively raised his hands and shouted in terror, "Don't you dare move closer." Luis halted, lightly stroked his chin, grinned, and remarked, "Isn't it said that dwarves carry the fear of dragons deep within their blood?" Then he swiftly commanded, "So, Ballo, from this moment on, you shall be my loyal servant." As those words hung in the air, panic overtook Ballo. He cupped his hands over his face and let out a wail of despair. "Yes, fiend." Beside them, he sighed in utter helplessness. Young Master Luis is truly making him a minion without a care. Ballo felt completely defeated. He knelt down before Luis. While on his knees, he quietly wept. Luis saw this, walked over, smiled, and softly patted Ballo's shoulder in an attempt to soothe him. Then he said, "It's all right. It's all right. That's just how life is. By the way, Ballo, how old are you?" Ballo responded, "I turned 5 this year." Hearing this, Luis licked his lips and exclaimed, "You're still so young, aren't you? The older one standing right here is 250 years old this year." Ballo's eyes widened, and a huge question mark popped up in his mind. He asked in bewilderment, "What, if you're only 250 years? Then isn't that still a hatchling?" Ballo's words sparked a fire of annoyance in Luis. He stepped forward, pointed at Ballo, and shouted, "What do you mean? Hatchling? I am a fierce and grand dragon." Ballo gasped in surprise. "Really? No way." With his hands on his hips, Luis replied, "Of course, you dunce." He walked over to Ballo again and lightly patted his shoulder. "All right, let's get serious. You'll serve me for a decade." As soon as Luis finished, Ballo gasped in shock. "What, a decade?" Luis continued. "It'll be about 10 years. But it might be shorter." Ballo stopped objecting and, with a serious expression, inquired, "What exactly will I be doing?" He pointed at Ballo's face and commanded, "Your mission is simply to take us home for the world's peace." Immediately after Luis spoke, Ballo stood there, utterly puzzled. He looked at him and asked, "How does taking you home contribute to world peace?" Luis narrowed his gaze and countered, "Do you know who I'm talking about when I say us?" Ballo responded, The dragon race. He pressed on. 1. Luis lifted his head slightly, his eyes gleaming with fierce intent. An intimidating aura emanating from him that was chilling. Luis looked at Ballo and said, "That's right, a hatchling. But have you ever heard this tale?" Then Luis started recounting the story of a naive knight who claimed to be a dragon slayer after killing a young dragon. The father of that dragon, consumed with fury, brazenly obliterated the entire kingdom. Once Luis finished his tale, Ballo gazed at him, disbelief vivid in his eyes, and asked, "Is that story real?" Luis casually closed his eyes a bit and replied, "Even monsters get furious when they're young or hurt. So, do you think a dragon would just sit back, especially if their parent is two high-ranking O-class dragons?" Ballo was taken aback, staring at Luis with wide eyes, pondering to himself. The world is heading for unparalleled chaos. Luis crossed his arms and inquired at Ballo, "Now, do you get it?" The man shrank back, fear evident in his voice as he replied, and then asked, "Yes. But why? Why would you trust such a crucial task to someone like me?" Luis frowned. Fixing his intense gaze on Ballo, he tilted his head slightly before turning away, thinking to himself, "Why, actually, it's because you're the first person I stumbled upon, and you seem pretty easy to manipulate." Moments later, Luis raised a hand to his mouth, feigned a cough, and said, "Ahem. Well, are you the chosen one?" Ballo asked, scratching his head. "The chosen one?" Luis shot back, admiring his broad shoulders and impressive strength. He mused, that guy looks so stout he'd probably never crack under pressure. With a glance at Ballo's strong hands, he proclaimed, "You've got an unyielding spirit that's always ready for battle," while thinking, "Any foe that crosses you won't last a second." Luis then focused on that majestic beard of his. Just one look, and it's clear you've got loyalty oozing from every pore, he thought excitedly. With dwarven blood in you, betrayal is off the table. He continued celebrating silently. Isn't that more than enough to deserve dragon lineage? He pondered, considering him a super servant. Ballo, hearing all of this, couldn't help but beam with happiness. He turned to Luis, with bright, eager eyes. Luis folded his arms, bowed slightly, and said, "And, you know, this is a one-time deal for you." Upon hearing this, Ballo perked up and asked, "A deal?" He raised his hand and added, "Think about it, not just one hatchling, but 3. If you can get these 3 dragon hatchlings safely home, don't you think their parents will overlook your efforts?" Ballo was taken aback by Luis's words. Continuing, Luis insisted, "A reward greater than your wildest dreams could await you." Hearing this fired Ballo up even more. "If that's the case, I'm with you." Seeing the excitement on his face, Luis crossed his arms, smirking, and asked, "So, does this mean you're confident about being the chosen one?" He nodded vigorously and replied, "Absolutely." Nearby, Finn watched them, thinking, young Master Luis is something else. Luis turned to Ballo, asking, "So, are you ready to join us?" Ballo didn't think twice. "Yes." Luis probed again. "Really? You won't have any regrets, right?" Ballo replied confidently. "No regrets here." With a smug grin, Luis proceeded to envelop Ballo in a flash of light. It was a stunning, bright yellow. Ballo, shocked, exclaimed, "What's going on?" Luis smirked, pointing at Ballo. "What do you mean? You just shackled yourself." Ballo frowned, asking, "What do you mean by that?" Luis explained, "What you did is what's called a blood pact. Every promise made in the presence of a dragon is absolute." Ballo asked, "What happens if you break that promise?" Nonchalantly, Luis replied, "Oh, it's not a big deal." Ballo, curled up in the corner, hugged his knees, trembling. His face turned pale as he stuttered, "I can't believe my family's legacy is over." Seeing him like this, Luis sighed in irritation. "Why so glum? Just stick to your promise, and you'll be fine." Ballo shot him a doubtful glance, asking, "Really? Are you sure?" Luis burst out, "Ugh, I told you already. If you don't trust me, go ask some other dwarves." Back in the dungeon room, Luis pointed at Ballo and introduced him to the twins. "All right, everyone, this guy is going to be our little helper. I mean, our temporary guardian is none other than Ballo." He stepped forward with a warm greeting, saying, "Hello, I'm Ballo." As they laid eyes on him, the twins sprinted over, their faces beaming with excitement and wonder, each bursting out, "He's a giant dwarf. I've never come across a dwarf this tall before." Upon hearing their words, Luis gazed at Ballo with intrigue and inquired, "Now that you mention it, how did you become so tall? Even if you were a half-breed, you wouldn't be this tall, right?" Ballo responded, "That's true. Back when I was young, I was quite a bit shorter than my friends. I believe when I hit my 20s, I munched on a peculiar fruit and fell ill for 10 days. When I finally woke up, I had transformed into this. Luis listened intently, surprised by Balo's tale. He swiftly asked what the fruit had looked like. In contrast to Luis's astonished face, Balo described it, saying, "It appeared rather odd. I think it resembled a bone." Luis's eyes widened in shock as he absorbed this information. Turning away, he pulled out his book. Eagerly flipping through the pages, Balo squinted, puzzled by Luis's frantic search. After his hunt, Luis beamed at Balo, showing him the page. Name, growth fruit. Water attribute. Rarity, high. Effect, promotes growth without any side effects. Characteristics, an elixir that thrives by consuming cold as a nutrient. Typically produces 3 to 4 fruits without blooming, and works wonders after reaching the age of 200 to 300 years. He pointed at the fruit in the book and asked, "Is this it?" Balo exclaimed. "Oh yes. That's it. The fruit I consumed looked exactly like that." After Balo confirmed, Luis closed the book with a snap. A spark of determination lit up in his eyes. He thought to himself, "This is it. This is the fruit. If I eat it, I can finally outdo those pesky twins. They're always teasing me for being shorter than them." With that thought, Luis straightened up and chuckled victoriously. His fierce expression made the twins feel uneasy, and they stammered. "We apologize, Captain. We're really sorry." Balo affectionately patted his head and began to take his leave. "Well then, I'll go inform my crew I'm heading out." Suddenly, Luis's expression shifted to seriousness as he declared, "Hold on just a moment." Balo halted, tilting his head in confusion, asking, "Yes?" Luis spoke firmly. "Heading home can wait. Our main mission right now is to find the growth fruit." He raised his hand, determined, with a fiery passion radiating around him. Luis held the book out in front of Balo. Name, growth fruit. Attribute, water. Rarity, high. Effect, promotes growth without any side effects. Description, an elixir that develops by drawing in cold as a nutrient. Typically generates an average of 3 to 4 fruits without blossom. It's most effective after hitting the age of 200 to 300 years. He pointed once more at the fruit in the book, asking, "Is this it?" Balo affirmed. "Oh yes. That's it. The fruit I ate looked just like that." After Balo's endorsement, Luis snapped the book shut again. A determined glimmer sparked in his eyes as he mused. "This is it. This is the fruit. If I can eat it, I'll finally be able to take down those mischievous twins. They always tease me for being the smallest." As this thought crossed his mind, Luis So stood tall and let out a triumphant laugh. His fierce glare sent chills down the twins' spines, making them stutter in fear. "We apologize, Captain. We truly are sorry." Balo gently rubbed his head and started to back away. "Well then, I'll just let my crew know I'm leaving." Suddenly, Luis So's expression darkened, and he barked an order. "Hold it right there." Balo paused, tilting his head in confusion, and responded, "Yes?" Luis So asserted. "Home can wait. Our main focus right now is the growth fruit." He then lifted his hand, gazing at it with fervent resolve as a blazing aura of passion ignited around him. As soon as he finished, the twins hurried over, their eyes sparkling with eagerness. Kang and Fi chimed in unison. "What fruit? What is that? The growth fruit? Huh, what kind of fruit are we talking about?" Luis So chose to remain silent, slightly frowning, thinking, "It's mine. No way I'm sharing that with these kids." Balo then cautiously spoke up. "But sir, there's a tiny issue." Luis So immediately snapped his head around, glaring with intensity, and snapped. What's the problem?" Balo met his gaze, clearly worried, and replied, "The Sosur people inhabit the area where the growth fruit tree is found, so it might be tough to get to it." Luis So fixed Balo with a steely look and retorted, "I'll say it once more. Cut the nonsense and lead me to the growth fruit tree. I'll handle the rest." He then casually turned away, a hand on his chin, sporting an air of supreme confidence. The expression on Luis So's face, mixed with the menacing vibe he emitted, made Balo quiver with fear. He thought, "He's so intimidating." Over by the cliff's edge, Luis So stepped forward. The four of them peered down to take a look. Luis So gazed at the distant tribe and exclaimed, "Is that the place?" Balo confirmed. "Yes, that's right. That's the Seir tribe. When they first came here, they were fewer in number. They've increased gradually, and now there are hundreds of them." Upon hearing this, Luis So pressed further. "So where exactly?" Balo, startled, shouted, "Sir!" Luis So looked at Balo with exasperation and asked, "I meant the location of the mature tree," Balo replied, his fear evident. "If I remember correctly, it's smack in the middle of the orc tribe." Hearing this, Luis So was taken aback, exclaiming, "What?" He pointed at Balo's face and shouted, "You fool! Doesn't that mean they've chopped the tree down already? In response to his outburst, Balo raised his hands defensively and tried to calm him down. No need to stress. The tree grows in a cave below. I stumbled upon it by accident. It's well hidden, so those clueless orcs won't locate it. Hearing this, Luis So breathed a sigh of relief. Thank goodness. Then, turning towards the twins, he called. Hey kids. Both of them raised their hands enthusiastically and responded. Yeah? He promptly commanded. Let's get started. Much to Balo's surprise, the three of them slid down together. Balo stared at them, his complexion fading, and yelled in fright. Wait, the Seirs pack a punch far beyond regular orcs? Shouldn't we have at least some sort of plan? Noticing his anxiety, Fi soared over, taking a look at Balo. Don't fret, she reassured him. Balo hesitated, saying, yes, but... Fi glanced at his worried face and sighed in exasperation. You idiot. Don't let their cute looks fool you into thinking they're kids. Take a good look. Why is it that dragons get hailed as the fiercest creatures in the land? It's because they inspire sheer terror in their foes. Back in the Seir's village, they quickly turned their heads at an odd sound, glancing around with puzzled expressions. In the distance stood Luis, So, wearing an intimidating look, with the twin siblings by his side. They rushed straight toward the Seirs, causing a startled outcry among them. The twins brandished their swords. Then, they unleashed their magic, surrounded by fierce bolts of lightning. Witnessing this, the Seirs couldn't help but shriek in horror. The twins showed no mercy, and with a swift slice, they pierced right through the Seirs, caught off guard by the sudden attack. The Seirs hastily grabbed their weapons and charged at once. Ki, wielding two blades, came diving down from above, eyeing them with eagerness and called out, Bring it on. Faced with the onslaught, the Seirs panicked and started to scatter. The twins, swords in hand, chased after them while shouting, Hey, where are you going? Get back here and hold your ground. In the distance, Fi noted, You see that? That's the essence of dragons. Balo could only watch in stunned silence. He turned to Fi, his eyes brimming with doubt, saying, Dragons are indeed incredibly powerful. But the Seirs aren't just going to bolt like that. She looked back and replied, There's a saying, a mouse runs from a snake. Right? Seems like the orcs are cut from the same cloth. Meanwhile, she pondered, even if they are Seirs, no matter what the orangutan do before a top predator, they can only run for their lives. How could they stand against the noble dragon race's aura with the Seirs driven by instinct? Balo gasped in realization. So, that's why whenever I'm in the presence of a dragon, I lose all my courage and freeze in terror. Finn continued. Exactly. It's the same with those humans. Maybe because they're still young. Their presence isn't all that intimidating yet. If they reach their second hibernation phase and grown up, merely encountering that aura could wipe out all the Seirs. Just then, from the distance, the orange-haired guy barreled over, shouting, Boss! The moment she spotted him, Finn quickly tucked into Balo's fur sleeve, mumbling in annoyance. So annoying. The orange-haired guy looked at Balo, eyes wide with concern. Boss, are you all right? His voice was loud enough to shake the mountain. Then he glanced at the Seir's village and couldn't help but exclaim in disbelief. Oh my gosh! He looked back at Balo, perplexed. The O tribe's village has been burned down. Boss, what on earth happened? He pointed downwards, saying, Those kids are down there. Khan was currently stretching his hand, casting a spell and launching an attack on the horde of Seir. Bolts of lightning from the boy's creative technique shot toward them, causing them to burst one after another. Next, another kid seized Khan's legs, ready to whirl him around. They both grinned with enthusiasm and shouted together. Feel the wrath of this lightning tornado. Khan surged forward. The boy spun with his sword in hand, then charged at the Seir. His sword, combined with his magic, obliterated everything in their path. Back with Balo, witnessing the chaos unfold. The orange-haired guy went pale and stuttered. Good heavens. The kids we captured are demolishing the Seir. Suddenly, his demeanor shifted as he looked at Balo and asked eagerly, You didn't foresee this happening, did you, boss? He stared at his subordinate, confused, and blurted out, Huh? Before he could continue, the orange-haired guy jumped to a joyful conclusion. I knew it. Boss, you've been keeping tabs on those kids since you first saw them. You realize they packed an incredible punch despite being so young. He frowned slightly and hesitated. Well, about that. Just then, Finn leaned into Balo's ear and whispered, Just echo what I say. Of course. Balo instantly raised his chin high and proudly repeated Finn's words. Of course. Hearing this, the orange-haired guy gazed at him with admiration. You truly are my boss. You're a great judge of talent. Finn whispered in Balo's ear. I instructed them to handle the Seir. He quickly echoed her words. I told them to handle the seer. Hearing this, the orange-haired guy brimmed with admiration and couldn't stop praising him. That's phenomenal. But who are those little rascals? What exactly are they up to? As the orange-haired guy spoke, Finn burst with rage and snapped. Who's this punk calling a little rascal? Ballo immediately pointed at the orange-haired guy and echoed. Who's this punk calling a little rascal? Confused? He exclaimed. Huh? Hearing him repeat what he shouldn't, Finn lost it, smacking Ballo on the head and yelling, Hey! You fool! Why would you repeat that? He quickly added. My bad. Miss. Sorry about that. The scene unfolding had the orange-haired guy completely baffled, and he exclaimed, Boss. Ballo sighed heavily and said, Regardless, we can't afford to act recklessly, so we must keep a close eye on the kids. The orange-haired guy asked, perplexed. What do you mean by acting recklessly? Meanwhile, the leader of the Seir crew shouted. Then, it grabbed its weapon and lunged at Luis. As it swung, it sent rocks and dirt flying everywhere, enveloping the area in thick smoke. But then it gasped in shock. Luis emerged completely unfazed by its strike. Luis glanced at it with a smile and asked, Are you finished? Now it's my turn, right? Luis gripped his weapon, activating his magic at the same time. He then raised his hand to strike directly at the Seir. Just one simple motion from Luis sent them hurtling away. The Seir couldn't react fast enough and crashed hard into the wall, creating a thunderous noise as rocks and debris scattered all over. Eventually, they couldn't hold on any longer, and the Seir fell over. Luis looked at the beast before him, sighed in boredom, and declared, How dull. Back to Ballo. He stood there, completely dumbfounded by the spectacle ahead. For the guy with orange hair. He finally broke the silence. Check out that move. Blood erupted from the wound amid a spine-chilling scream, as Sai and Khan paired up, striking down and sending a scorching blast backwards. When it was all said and done, Sai plopped down wearily onto the snow and declared, All done. Khan, sitting beside her, grumbled, Man, I'm wiped out. Luis noticed the two youngsters looked drained after finishing their mission, so he tossed a couple of fruits behind him, saying, You both did great. I'm off for a bit. The kids perked up instantly, cheerfully responding, All right. Suddenly, Luis spotted two shadowy figures on the mountainside. As soon as he saw their hair color, irritation flared up in him, and he yelled an order. Hey! You! Get down here right now! What on earth are you doing just standing there watching from far away? Hearing his command, Ballo quivered. He quickly turned to his associate and stammered. You stay put. I'll go check it out. Just then, the orange-haired subordinate chimed in. I'll accompany you, boss. Ballo paused for a heartbeat, then asked, You really want to come along? The orange-haired subordinate instantly shook his head and replied, No. Sir. Boss. You should go solo. Sir. Ballo could only grit his teeth at his companion's reluctance. Moments later, Ballo stood behind Luis, his sarcasm oozing as he said, Sir, you called for me? Luis abruptly asked, Where's it at? Ballo, puzzled, questioned back, Huh? What? Luis's expression shifted to annoyance as he shot him a glance, asking in a low tone, Where's my growth fruit? A brief pause followed, and Ballo led Luis towards a mighty boulder. Eyeing a tiny hole in the rock, Luis inquired, Is this the place? He quickly affirmed, Yes, sir. Ballo, like a show-off, he knelt and elaborated. Just squeeze through this hole and enter the pathway down into the cave. Suddenly, he mumbled, looking puzzled. Ballo remarked, That's odd. I used to get through here just fine. While trying to explain to Luis, from Luis's view, it looked like the man's rear was just swaying, which kinda grossed him out. On the verge of losing his lunch, he interrupted, You stay right there. After all, it's right in front of us, isn't it? Though Ballo seemed a bit thrown off, he nodded. Yes, sir, without delay. Luis dove into a small crevice in the rock, following the narrow passage deep into the cave. Suddenly, a flicker of light shimmered in the distance, causing Luis to exclaim, Oh, is that it? He darted towards the glow. As he approached, Luis gasped, eyes wide with wonder. The brilliant light emanated from a petite plant. Upon sighting it, Luis erupted with glee, shouting, Yes, I found it. At the plant's base, he spotted two tiny fruits. Luis's face lit up with enthusiasm as he exclaimed, My growth fruit, the key to my dreams of towering height. Suddenly, something struck him. He reached out, grabbed the growth fruit, and wondered aloud, Why is it so tiny? This isn't even half the size stated in the book. After a moment's thought, he let out a frustrated sigh. It appeared they weren't fully developed yet. At this rate, it might take at least 200 years for them to fully grow. Luis frowned. He pondered for a moment before exhaling in frustration. Clearly, they weren't fully grown yet. At this rate, it would likely take at least 200 years for them to mature fully. Luis frowned. Gazing at the tiny growth fruit, Luis thought to himself that munching on it now would be pointless. So, what's the game plan? Moments later, he stepped back outside. As soon as Ballo spotted him, he asked with urgency, "You're back." "Sir, did you track down the growth fruit?" Luis brushed off some dirt and sighed. "Well, you were right. The growth plant is down there. But the fruit still isn't big enough." Ballo stuttered. "So, what's our next move?" Luis replied as he moved ahead. "There's no choice. We must wait for the fruit to mature before we can eat it." As Luis walked on, Ballo's comment halted him. "If we just leave it like this, won't someone come and grab it?" He then shot back a sharp look and echoed, "Grab it?" Luis's eyes sparkled with amusement as he replied chillingly, "Let them try." Shortly after, a protective barrier appeared, and at its center was a sign written in hasty scrawl. On closer inspection, the sign threatened, "Keep out. Touch Luis's property, and your next 9 generations will face a curse. I will cast a blight on all 9 generations of your bloodline. If you're brave enough to face the repercussions, then go ahead and try." Luis then turned to Ballo. "Do you have any men? Send a few of them over to keep watch." Ballo looked stunned and asked, "What? Why use my men?" Before Ballo could finish his thought, Luis shot him a look, demanding, "Are you challenging me?" Ballo quickly backtracked. "Take as many as you need." "Sir, they're all yours." Luis glanced toward the cave, feeling a twinge of unease. "Despite all the traps I've set, my nerves are still on edge. I need someone to keep watch until the growth fruit is fully ripe." Moments later, Luis stood arms crossed, pondering deeply. The bandits below all appeared utterly drained or barely awake. Unable to bear it any longer, Luis turned to Ballo, ready to vent his frustration. How come not a single one of them looks capable? Then he focused on the group, thinking, "But for the sake of my future growth, it's worth any amount of time it takes." With that in mind, Luis declared, "I'll make this quick." Below, the bandits were confused and began to murmur amongst each other. "What's with the sudden gathering? Your guess is as good as mine. Are we gearing up for a fight?" An orange-haired henchman spotted him and panicked. "That little demon. What's he doing here? What's his plan?" Amid their chaos, Luis called out, "Hello, my friends, dear bandits." A smug grin spread across his face as he continued, "I've got some crucial news to share with you. And that is..." Luis paused briefly before quickly resuming. "Effective today, the bandit gang is officially disbanded." The moment he uttered those words, the bandits below were left dumbfounded. Enraged, they shouted, "What did you say? What right do you have to disband us?" The orange-haired underling turned to Ballo in disbelief. "Boss, what's going on? Don't tell me you agreed to this?" In response, the boss stood silent, avoiding his eye contact. Just then, Luis called for the twins. The 2 sisters quickly appeared, responding, "Yes, we're here." He smiled with excitement. "Let's get started." As soon as the order arrived, the sisters cracked their knuckles and said, "We're on it." Witnessing this, the bandits couldn't help but shout in terror, "Why are you coming over? Don't approach us." But their cries fell on deaf ears, as the orange-haired henchman took the first snowball hit right away. In no time, the 2 blokes behind him got blasted next. Watching C and Khan throw with such enthusiasm, Luis began to cheer them on. "That's the way. Awesome job. My little champs, now that's how you give him a good whack. Keep it up." Observing all this, Ballo was left utterly speechless. Listening to the agonized wails of his crew, he could only cry silent tears, murmuring inwardly, "Forgive me, my friends." After a little while, the bandits who had just moments ago been unscathed were now all squirming in pain on the snowy ground, pleading for mercy. "We're done for, please. Let us go." While the scene was tragic for them, Luis's crew was enjoying every moment of it. He affectionately patted Khan on the head, grinning as he remarked, "Excellent work." Then Luis glanced back at them, sizing up the situation. "Have you had enough? This is your little show. You can't even deal with just 2 kids." Hearing this, they could only silently retaliate in their heads. "They're more than just kids." Then Luis shouted an encouraging phrase. "But don't worry." He flashed what was meant to be a cheerful smile and assured them, "I'll whip you all into shape in no time." Atop a lofty mountain, a little squirrel was happily perched on a branch with a pine cone. Out of nowhere, something zipped by, scaring it and causing it to drop its pine cone. As the squirrel quickly darted away, a voice called out from behind, critiquing, "You're putting way too much force into your legs." Luis continued his assessment. "Are a soldier's eyes merely for show? Why can't you dodge something right in your path?" The bandits he was training sprawled out on the ground, wailing and begging, "It's too quick. Please. Have mercy. Observing their pitiful state, Luis couldn't help but express his frustration. These guys are laughably weak. All right. Let's take a 10-minute breather. A pudgy bandit flopped down onto the snow, gasping for breath. Seriously. At this rate, we're done for. I'd rather just faint and end it all. The orange-haired bandit chimed in, irritated. Exactly. The ones who passed out didn't even get hit. Then, the chubby one had a light bulb moment. What if the two of us just run away? Huh. He was quickly shot down by the orange-haired bandit. No way. The guys in the other room tried to bolt and got caught. They've been stuck training from sunrise to sunset for 2 whole days. Didn't you hear? The chubby one burst out in exasperation. Darn it. We were never soldiers, so why are we stuck enduring this horrible training? The orange-haired guy stood up and whispered softly. You're still kicking. Huh? Still thinking that way? His eyes still brimmed with tears as he spoke with a hint of resignation. I've given up thinking. Every day I get battered with a blank mind. Somehow, the day just goes by. Before he could finish his thought, the overweight guy began to wail loudly, tears filling his eyes. He angrily declared, That's just not fair, getting thrashed like this every single day. My body should be a wreck. Tell me, how come we're all perfectly fine the next day? Just like that. The hefty fellow let out a booming shout. Crap. Meanwhile, Luis S. was in high spirits, thinking to himself, they're growing up so fast. Luis S. couldn't help but reminisce about his recent antics. Each evening, he'd sneak an extra bottle of his dad's premium potion and give it to them. All they had to do was sleep it off, and their energy would bounce back in no time. During training, they couldn't slack because he transferred his willpower to them through a mental technique. I'm mentoring them using a book I borrowed from my father's collection, making sure they grow stronger every single day. Even though it's just the basics, it's from a dragon's library. After all, it's such a waste to pass this on to these fools. Luis S. frowned a bit at the book, in his grip, realizing that if he wanted to whip them into shape quickly, there was no other choice. He glanced at the book and said, You guys are super lucky. You know that? Suddenly, Balo showed up, shouting, Sir Luis S., spotting him. Luis quickly responded, Oh, you're here. How's that task I assigned you going? Balo hesitated a moment before sharing his progress. I've done what you asked. Seeing everything in line with his plan, he smiled and said, Oh, is that so? You've put in a lot of effort. You can go ahead and get ready. I'll bring the kids along shortly. Upon hearing this, Balo replied, Yes, sir. A devious glint appeared in Luis S.'s eyes, and his tone turned icy. This is how you push a beast off a cliff to teach it to toughen up. Balo watched his intense excitement and felt uneasy. Just how long does he intend to torment them? A little while later, atop a steep mountain, the bandit crew was cautiously treading over the snow. The masked guy glanced at the hefty one and curiously asked, Why are we training up here? The hefty guy replied, Who knows what this big bag is for? The boss said to wear it. So here we are. Suddenly, a shout rang out behind them. Make way! A massive weapon slammed onto the snow. So we wear it. But suddenly, a loud shout rang out from behind. Move aside. A massive weapon was slammed into the snow. As soon as they laid eyes on the weapon, they gasped. A catapult! A wooden catapult is right in front of us. Balo quickly raised a hand to wipe the sweat from his brow. The bewildered orange-haired guy stepped forward and asked, Boss, why'd you suddenly bring a catapult? Are we heading into battle? Before Balo could respond, another voice burst in. Listen up, everyone. Luis S., with a serious demeanor, looked at them and declared, You must be wondering why you're all here, right? But instead of a long-winded explanation, it's best to show you. After his introduction, he spun around and yelled, Now, my expert teaching assistant. Step up. Sai quickly acknowledged the order, exclaiming, On my way. Just then, the little girl skipped over to the catapult. Kaney was perched joyfully in the catapult seat, cheering with delight. The bandits turned as white as ghosts and stuttered. No way. This can't be right. Can it? This isn't right. Luis S. ignored them and shouted an order to the little girl. Get the catapult ready, Sai eagerly responded. All set. Immediately, he pointed forward and yelled, 2 shots, and just like that, they were launched. The little girl was having the time of her life, grinning from ear to ear, while the bandit crew was frozen in fear. They screamed. This is insane, totally insane. Even Balo was unnerved. Oh wow. So this is what the cliff story was all about. Is this how it goes? They all silently tracked Sai's path, just as they witnessed the little girl nearing her fall. They frantically yelled, Wait, is she really falling? Naturally, Luiso wouldn't assign Sai a mission this perilous. Just then, a paraglider sprang forth from that hefty backpack. The group of bandits nearly had a collective heart failure. Luis So surveyed the outcome in front of him and beamed. Fantastic. The catapult has proven to be remarkably effective. Its performance is outstanding. Did you all catch that? Just imitate it like that. Once he had finished, he glanced over at them. They all appeared ghostly pale. None dared to move. Luis So couldn't help but question. Confused. Huh? What's with those looks? Didn't you see everything? Well, I'll perform it once more for you to see. Immediately, he called out. Catapult 2. Go. Khan quickly echoed back. Go. The little boy, just like Sai, cheered with excitement as he was propelled into the sky. Observing the unexpected distance, Luis So pondered. It looks like the kids are lighter, allowing them to fly a bit farther than the adults. Propping his chin on his hand, he smiled thoughtfully. Regardless, this is still manageable, so everything's peachy. With this, I can zip over there before my elixir gets snatched. Just in time. The two kids have finished. Luis So then directed his gaze toward the bandits and remarked, simple, right? Climb on. Soar up. Then parachute down to land. His words made them scream in terror. What on earth? Fatty shook like a leaf and stepped back. Then, Fatty bolted away while wailing. Help me, help me. I refuse to meet my end here. Luis So promptly snapped his fingers and a magical barrier appeared, obstructing Fatty's escape. Since he was running full tilt, he couldn't halt in time and collided headfirst into the magical shield. Fatty toppled backward. He approached them and explained. I understand. I do realize you're frightened. But all you need is a sprinkle of bravery, and you'll pull it off. Hearing this, orange-haired one quickly interjected. No way. Shouldn't you hear out those who are being launched? Who in the world came up with this wild idea? Luis So shot Balo a slightly irritated glance, saying, seriously, you said it was feasible, right? Suddenly, his words took on an intriguing implication. If someone showcases it, would you all be convinced? Observing Luis So's eerie smile, he raised his hands in mock surrender. Wondering, why is he looking at me like that? Balo couldn't help but flinch at Luis's playful smirk. Seeing this, Luis stepped closer with a question. So, are you up for it? Huh? Balo stammered his reply. I'm not exactly brimming with courage. Before he could finish, Luis So called out to the rest. Hey, everyone. Your boss says the ammunition is a tad tiny. Rush and fetch the larger ammo to shoot. Orange Hair quickly pieced it all together and replied. Sir, for anyone puzzled by Luis So's antics, let me clarify. In Korean, the term for cowardly also refers to a small stone. They immediately seized their boss in anger, thinking, this is all your fault, boss. While we were grinding away, you were just lounging. After all, that human was the one who brought that catapult. Balo couldn't contain his shock and yelled, you idiots! Let me go. Even though they were terrified, they defiantly remarked, well, you asked for this, boss. Their voices dripped with bitterness. This is all you're doing. Balo could only helplessly call out to his crew as he saw their distressed expressions. As he approached the catapult, he shrieked in terror. Let me go, please. Just spare me. But his cries fell on deaf ears. Then, Balo found himself soaring through the sky once the order to launch was given. Lee watched him fly and thought, I was concerned that his large frame might not even take off. But man, he's really going the distance. Huh? He turned back, grinned at them, and asked, so, who's next? The bandits quickly erupted into wails, thinking, that's right, up we go, Mama. I miss you. After that, the snowy, rocky terrain echoed with wailing cries. In that moment, one sharp scream pierced through. So, this is the feeling. Just like that, an entire morning slipped away. 4 weeks later, in Luis's room, he sat at his desk, mulling over, should I take this with me? Luis eyed the book in front of him, reflecting. This martial arts book is fantastic, but it's just scratching the surface. If a real powerhouse strolls in, the tree I've nurtured could be snatched away. He picked up the book, diving deeper into thought. If I want to be ready, I need to impart some advanced martial arts techniques, but the only advanced manual I've got. He glanced at the book's title and mused. It's the Hero Lord's Martial Arts Guide. His mind buzzed with confusion. The issue is, I can't make sense of this book. Luis felt his brain threatening to explode as he inwardly cried. Time's running out. Where can I find a suitable advanced martial arts manual? Contain himself any longer. He shouted. Oh my goodness. What am I supposed to do now? Suddenly, Khan appeared from behind him out of nowhere and asked, Luis, what's going on? Connie popped her head up like a curious little owl and asked, are you worried about something? Luis grabbed his heart and exclaimed, oh wow. As soon as Khan spotted the book's title, he started to critique it, saying, hey, What's this? A martial arts book? Are you studying it? But it's so dull. When Luis heard that, he gasped in disbelief. You guys have actually read this book? The boy quickly chimed in. Yeah. We've gone through it a bunch of times. Kanye, standing beside him, added. There are loads of them in Dad's study. Hearing this, Luis felt a wave of joy inside. Awesome. Externally, he continued questioning the two siblings. So, do you know any martial arts techniques at all? The little girl eagerly raised her hand, boasting. Khan knows 5 moves, not wanting to be overshadowed. The boy cleared his throat and responded. Well, Khan actually knows 10 moves. They argued for a bit, sparks igniting between them. Well, I know 20, and I know 100. Luis could only feel exasperated watching these two kids. They might be a bit silly. But surely That's right. A smirk crept onto his face. They've definitely picked up some advanced martial arts skills. In that moment, Luis proposed an idea. Enough with the bickering. Let's see who really knows more, Kanye asked. Puzzled. Compare? Why? Khan seemed hesitant and answered. That sounds like a hassle. Luis had a knack for getting into kids' heads. Weren't you two just bickering over who memorized more? Well, let's settle this by writing it down. The moment they heard that, the two siblings eagerly exclaimed, I'm going to crush this, let's go, I'm winning. Soon after, the two kids he'd outsmarted were furiously scribbling at the table. Meanwhile, Luis crossed his arms, wearing a self-satisfied grin. They really are sharp little kids. The sibling rivalry kicked off, while the candle still flickered brightly. A little later, just as the candle was about to fizzle out, a shout erupted from behind. I'm done. Kenny bounced up to him and announced, Luis. I finished first this time, but right after, the boy retorted, No way. Khan finished first. Luis looked at the 2 piles of paper in the siblings' hands, astonished. You're already finished? The little girl beamed and responded. Yep. The boy beside her jumped in. All done? He quickly checked them one by one, thinking, this isn't just a couple of pages, they wrote all of this. They didn't just doodle nonsense, did they? Suddenly, Luis stared blankly at the papers. Then, in a rush, he started organizing the piles. After a bit, he finally completed the task. Luis gazed at the heaps of paper, realizing they had transcribed over 10 martial arts books in their entirety. Khan saw Luis finish up and eagerly asked, Who won? The little girl quickly echoed. Kenny won, right? The two kids began bickering again. No. Khan won. What? I wrote 1 more book. So Kenny's the champ. Luis, exasperated, placed his hands on his hips, watching them. Then he yelled. It's a tie this time, Kenny asked, puzzled. Huh. A tie? Khan, also in disbelief, queried. What does that mean? Luis hurried to explain. Kenny's quantity was 6 books more, but Khan's martial arts content was top-notch. The siblings' faces scrunched up at Luis's verdict. Finally, he announced. So, it's a tie. The two kids, feeling let down, groaned. That's so dull. Phim suddenly zoomed in and declared, Master Luis, I've completed all the tasks you set. The backpack is almost done as well. He quickly responded. Oh. Really? Perfect timing. Luis smiled to himself, thinking. I've secured the high-level martial arts book. Time to get ready for the grand finale. 2 weeks later, a thunderous shout rang out. The bandit crew, after their training, stood in line, taking orders with utmost seriousness. The orange-haired leader bellowed, Everyone salute. Luis stood atop a large rock, watching them execute the command flawlessly. He was thrilled and beamed. Even the heavy-set guy who had stirred up trouble before was now following orders dutifully. Everyone had transformed completely. Luis nodded and said with a grin, I am extremely pleased. I want to show my respect for all of you who have stuck with me through the last 6 weeks. You've all worked hard. They replied with an enthusiastic cheer. With the two siblings beside him on the rock, Luis spoke earnestly. You may all be wondering why you had to endure such grueling training. Then Luis broke into a smile. That's because at that moment, a brilliant light suddenly appeared, dazzling them. The bandits, stunned by the sight, they cried out, Whoa! What is that? They pointed ahead and exclaimed, Look! There's a figure emerging from that blinding light. The guy with orange hair, in pure panic, shouted, Oh my gosh! Right before their eyes stood a radiant figure dressed in white and gold, his gaze leaving everyone in awe. A grand voice echoed, Listen up, you mere mortals. The voice emerged from the figure that appeared like a mirage. You have been selected by the god Kenzo. The bandits were taken aback at the mention of the name. Aya, donning a green hat, stuttered, We've been chosen by the god Kenzo. Tales of this legend had been shared through the ages. The god Kenzo, a deity from ancient times, had vanquished the demons wreaking havoc on the world. It was said that this god of war had formed a mountain from the remains of the demon race. Now, this magnificent god stood before them, leaving them astounded. Everyone began to tremble. Meanwhile, inside the illusion of the god Kenzo, Luis was scrambling to operate everything. He was frantically working within the god's silhouette, muttering, "So busy. So very busy." Luis quietly admired the outcome of his handiwork. The illusion of the god, Kenzo, was crafted, utilizing spatial tricks to bend and reflect light. Everything was proceeding quite well. He looked to the side in confusion and immediately shouted. Luis proclaimed, "There's a breach on the side of the illusion." The two sisters hurried over and assured him, "Don't worry. We'll fix it instantly." Ka leaped up to adjust the illusion. Gradually, the gap on the exterior began returning to its original state. Luis turned back and showered them with praise. "Awesome job." Then, he concentrated on generating a source of strength by expanding the space to engage with the atmosphere. Luis made the god Kenzo announce a line. "That's right. You have been chosen." The figure outside, the god, spoke majestically. "You shall confront the calamities that are destined for this land. You will become the beams of light cutting through the darkness." His next words inspired them. "Become the blades that punish demons." Seeing their belief firming up, Luis smirked, thinking to himself that this should do the trick. "Now, I just need to etch this conviction deep within their minds." The god Kenzo spoke, imprinting a crimson source of power, which manifested on the bandits' bodies as red letters. Overflowing with faith, they shouted joyfully, "We trust in the god Kenzo." Recognizing the moment had arrived, Luis messaged her, "Phi, it's time." Phi quickly responded, "Yes, master." Right after, she flew towards a small tree. Phi poured the liquid from a glass vial around its base. It was a plant growth stimulant crafted personally by her master. As she poured out the last drop, as if by magic, the little tree surged in size. Gazing at the giant tree that now towered over her, Phi exclaimed in wonder, "Oh, that's so effective." The sudden emergence of the massive tree left everyone astounded. The bandits' eyes grew wide as they shouted, "A colossal ancient tree just appeared out of nowhere. It's a miracle." The god Kenzo continued to speak. "This is evidence of the pact I grant to you." He gestured toward a large boulder and added, "And this is your trial to validate yourselves." They immediately turned their attention to it. Luis promptly messaged the man, "Balo, go for it now." The man paused for a moment before saying, "Absolutely, sir." Then Balo picked up his axe and began to chop. With each swing, chunks of rock flew away. Eventually, the massive boulder splintered open, revealing a cave with a sign reading, "Cave of Trials." Then, the god Kanasur spoke up, "To those brave enough to conquer this cave of trials, my blessing and a grand reward await." The band of bandits erupted with joy, shouting, "Hail, great Kos!" Luis was practically bouncing with excitement, thinking to himself, "In that cave over there, I've certainly hidden the martial arts secrets penned by the Gemini Scorpion along with the divine magic I personally chose." Remembering the trial wall inside the cave, he continued to ponder, "I've rigged up some tricky traps crafted by Balo. So, retrieving those treasures won't be easy." The god Kenos kept speaking, "Oh, chosen warriors, I'll return when the Tree of Promise is still standing strong." His voice grew fainter as he added, "You must have faith and be patient." Just like that, god Kenos disappeared from their sight. The orange-haired fellow suddenly chimed in. "So, that's what's going on." Overflowing with excitement, he exclaimed to himself, "Of course, we are the chosen ones." All the struggles they faced were merely tests to make this selection. Everyone nodded in agreement with the orange-haired guy, cheering joyously. "Indeed, we are the chosen ones. Long live the great god." Kenos. Luis crossed his arms, watching their celebration with a smirk. "Perfect," he thought proudly. "What a fantastic ending." The two sisters and Finn also chimed in gleefully. "This is so exciting." "We contributed too." Luis quickly bowed and replied, "Thank you. Thank you so much." Balo silently watched the kids from a distance, averting his gaze with increasing pity as he mused. They really think they were chosen by a god. Balo glanced at the giant wish tree, thinking, that tree is the symbol of it all. This land has transformed into a holy territory, and they will willingly risk everything to protect it. His heart ached with pity. These poor kids, pushed by destiny to become the loyal guardians. Suddenly, a thought struck Balo, leaving him bewildered. Hang on, if they're the guardians, does that make me the Alpha Guardian? The very idea sent him spiraling down, lamenting his own fate. Just then, Luis shouted, Balo, what are you doing? We need to get moving. Responding to his call, Balo could only sigh. Yes, let's head out. At that moment, Khan's voice rang out. Louise, where to now? Though unsure of the destination, the little girl cheerfully piped up. Let's find somewhere more thrilling. Time passed in Silverfire City. Genlocker gazed thoughtfully out the door. He pondered sadly. Is the boy eating properly now? Suddenly, Genlocker let out a deep sigh. No matter how crucial the succession is, I shouldn't have allowed the boy to go off alone. He felt incredibly frustrated. Thinking, at such a pivotal moment, where has father wandered off to now? I wish father could watch over the boy for me. After a moment, Locker shouted resolutely in his mind. Forget it. He quickly snatched up his coat, convincing himself, I've got piles of work to tackle. But missing a day is fine. Suddenly, a figure appeared behind him, saying, Where are you rushing off to in such a haste? The man with white hair grinned and said, Don't tell me you're actually thinking of ditching your sacred responsibilities and running off. The white-haired man's remarks froze Jen in place. Awkwardly, Genlocker replied, Run off? What are you on about? But what brings you here? Kaiser? Turns out the white-haired guy is the father of Kay and Kenny, a bold dragon without shame. He cheerfully responded, What am I doing? Just here to keep an eye on you. Naturally, Genlocker, clearly displeased, shot back. Don't you have something better to do? Quit fooling around and scram. Crozer Carlos smirked, saying nothing more. Sensing the tension, Genlocker helplessly inquired, If you aren't leaving, what's keeping you here? He quickly broke into a smile. Carlos glanced at the blue orb, picked it up, and joked, You look bored. So I thought I'd come hang out. Completely fed up with his friend, Genlocker replied, It's not me who's bored. It's definitely you. Carlos didn't argue and admitted, Yeah, you got that right. A grin spread across his face as he peered into the orb. Inside the orb, Lear's cheerful image emerged. Carlos then posed a question. Are you worried about Lear again? Genlocker kept quiet, not responding. It was as if Carlos read his mind, saying, You're planning to sneak out to visit Lear, aren't you? Stammering. Genlocker denied it. I don't know what you're saying. The more he protested, the more amused Carlos became, laughing heartily. He quickly reminded him, Don't you realize it's off limits outside? What will you do if you get caught? At a loss for words, Genlocker replied, What do you think the elders are like? Of course, they'll be monitoring everything. If I get caught, there's nothing I can do. Carlos unexpectedly exclaimed, Good grief. This guy is really worried about Lear. Huh. Hearing this, Genlocker snapped back. And you're not worried about your kids? Pointing to himself, he added, Kenny and Kay? I'm not worried about them one bit. Genlocker couldn't believe it, and questioned again. What? How can that be? Carlos explained. You know my kids are crazy about Lear, right? Whenever they visit, they're always looking for Lizer. He spoke animatedly, his smile bright. Lizer isn't just any kid. He even looks after the kids better than I do. Genlocker fell silent for a moment, then retorted bitterly. How can this guy be so full of himself right now? Immediately, Carlos casually responded, Genlocker, you're way too protective of your child. It's not a bad thing. But Lear isn't just any young dragon. Just reflecting on Lear, I could list off his amazing traits. He not only has 4 powerful attributes, but the way he thinks and acts is just like a fully matured dragon. There's no one in this world that has it easier than you when it comes to raising a kid. Then Carlos exclaimed in frustration, You, my friend, are definitely blessed. Even knowing this, Genlocker still expressed concern. Still, but Carlos leaned in closer and said, So stop fretting over Lear and focus on the succession instead. Who knows? Lizer could be having a blast without you hovering around. Suddenly, as if a thought struck him, Carlos grinned and declared, Oh, and if you think my twins might pick on Lear, don't stress. I've already told the kids to respect Lizer. Listening to Carlos, Genlocker could only suppress his irritation and respond. The twins have totally inherited your quirks. So that's definitely how it goes. Carlos saw no issue with this and burst into laughter. Right? I think so. 2. He rested his hand on his chin, deep in thought. Anyway, they nearly triggered a catastrophe, so I handed them to Lizer. If they stir up any trouble, I won't step in, and I'll let Lizer sort it out. Then he chuckled with glee. My kids might be mischievous, but with Lizer around, he'll know how to fix it quickly and efficiently. Meanwhile, Carlos was completely unaware of Genlocker's expression darkening by the second. He turned to his buddy and asked, What do you think? Can you see how well I've trained the kids? Just then, Manhwa immediately heard sounds of a fierce scuffle. Just as he suspected, Cass was being thoroughly pummeled by Genlocker. This guy. Today I'm absolutely going to crack your skull open and see what's ticking inside. What's with you? Why are you even doing this? Stop it. And then, there was just a pitch-black void. The sounds faded more and more. At the same time, Luis Chu was on his travels. His name echoed energetically. Luis Chu. Luis Chu. Luis Chu. He could only shout back in resignation. Quit calling me. Kids. The two little ones beamed at Luis Chu and said sweetly, but if we don't shout your name, Luis Chu won't even glance at us. He sighed, raising a hand to his forehead, and replied tiredly, okay. Okay. You can stop yelling at me now. Right after that, the two children clung to Luis Chu like koalas, no matter what he said. Can you please let go for a second? The kids firmly declared. We're not letting go. Luis is the coolest. He could only wonder in despair, what on earth did I do in my last life to deserve this? Suddenly, a voice rang through. Young Master Luis. A horse thundered over. It was Balo, who arrived with the horse and the carriage in tow. Right after that, he called out. Whoa, Balo quickly turned to Luis Chu, as if fishing for compliments. I've got the carriage ready just as you asked. He affectionately patted the horse's head, smiled, and said, oh, well done. Now we can journey more comfortably. Then Luis Chu asked him, Balo, if we head west, what's the nearest port? He thought for a moment, then replied, if you're looking for the westward nearest port, that'd be Port Lewin. It's a busy hub for trade with other continents, so you can easily find a ship. As soon as Luis Chu heard this, he immediately inquired, really? How long will it take to reach there? Balo quickly calculated and replied, moving at this pace, it would take about 6 months. If we factor in the delays from storms, it might stretch to a year. Hearing this made Luis Chu contemplate for a moment. 1 year? That's far longer than I believed. Huh? If something unexpected occurs, it could take even longer. He looked at him and asked, is there really no other way to speed it up? Balo scratched his head, trying to recall. He thought for a bit, then answered, on the ice continent, there's a lot of snowfall, so a horse-drawn sleigh is probably the fastest option. Other than that, there's no way to hasten the journey. Luis Chu leaned his chin on his hand, contemplating. Looks like I'll be stuck on the ice continent for nearly a year. This is such a hassle. Suddenly, Balo nervously called out, Sir Luis Chu. He cast a glance and inquired, what's up? He stuttered slightly as he spoke. I wonder if it's even possible. But can't you reach out to the other dragons? Noticing Luis Chu eyeing him, Balo quickly added, oh no, you've probably thought of that already. He put on a charming grin and continued, or if you have any connection to a dragon on this continent, you could enlist their help to get you back home. Suddenly, a thought clicked in Luis Chu's mind. Yeah. Right. He muttered to himself. There must be dragons lurking in the icy continent. Maybe I could plead with one to help me. That should work. But then, Luis suddenly fell silent. In a soft tone, Luiso asked, which dragon are you talking about? Inquired again. Pardon me? The tension around him thickened as he replied. I said, I don't know any dragons. The man's mood also darkened at that, exclaiming, oh wow. Just then, Luis seemed to recall and shouted, wait a second. Phi. Is it possible you don't know anyone? She shyly replied, I don't actually know the other dragons either. The two kids joyfully shouted, neither do we. Luis simply remarked, well, I wasn't counting on much from you guys. He quietly wondered if he could track down another dragon. That would drastically cut down the time to get back. Gazing at the vast snowy landscape surrounding him, Luis pondered where on earth he would find a dragon. Suddenly, an idea sparked, prompting him to ask, oh, wait, Balo, do you have any dragon legends you know of? Balo echoed the words. Legends about dragons? He thought for a second, then answered, I do know a few tales. You might want to check out the cities to the west for more info. As if he'd found a beacon of hope, Luis exclaimed cheerfully, awesome, no time to waste. Let's hit the road. The two siblings chimed in. What? Then Luis declared, the mission is set. Time to go find a dragon. The sun dipped slowly, casting its glow on the impressive snowy mountain. Towering pine trees bordered the mountainside as a horse-drawn carriage made its way forward. Balo tightened the reins, coming to a halt. Whoa. Easy there. Horse. He turned back to check on Luis, who was seated quietly with Finn leaning softly on his shoulder. The two kids, Sai and Khan, were fast asleep. So he suggested, it's getting dark, and we've got a long distance to the next city. I think it's wise to stop and rest here. Luis nodded in agreement. Sounds like a plan. The clear blue sky was now ablaze with vibrant orange hues. A campfire was quickly kindled amidst the winter scenery, making the air feel a tad warmer. Luis's group sat in a circle. At that moment, a few chickens appeared on the spit, sizzling over the fire. The mouth-watering aroma wafted through the air, and when Sai and Khan caught sight of it, their eyes sparkled. desire unmistakable as they shouted. Wow, that looks delicious. Khan turned to Balo, eagerly asking, Hey, dwarf, how long until it's ready? Seeing the kids so excited, Balo replied, It's nearly done, just hang tight for a little bit more. Balo grabbed the food and sprinkled some extra seasoning to amp up the flavor. Sai and Khan looked absolutely adorable, their eyes shimmering with excitement. Dressed in blue and white with bright yellow bows,